entry guys moving forward. I mean, the jobs story is funny, right? Because they kicked them out, and then they brought them back. I mean, he controls it just by force of personality, but not because he controls it. You lose control when you take VC, you lose more control when you do the IPO, you lose even more control with GSK. So that's the people who in distant galaxies can't. So, Roshi, I loved your point on the deal thing. We thought a lot about, I wanted to do a quick call deal. I wanted to do a Genentech thing. We talked a lot about it. It's just too complicated ultimately. I loved Casey's point on HR. Like, you clearly have thought a lot about, like, I totally didn't get it when we sold the company and people had been through it before. They're like, you gotta line everyone up, you gotta fight for everyone's title, whatever. Like, I never talked about, I didn't care about my title, my salary, my luck, I just kind of wanted to hope that they would invest for 3 years into we didn't talk a lot about that. The major points were, are you going to invest for the next 3 years at least? And then in terms of independence versus non-independence, I totally agreed. It's a little bit like Pixar, like Trevor said, you got to keep it independent. That's like in direct contrast. When I sell my next company, I'm not selling it to you, Frank.
I'll pay more.
I may sell it to you. I mean, if you integrated HR and IT, they're still independent. 2 years later, we still have our Citrus account. I ran the company as CEO until last week. And I'm still the chair of the SAB, so I'm still very focused on trying to get these drugs to market. But I still have my Citrus account, still have my computer. It's key to keep people aligned, and GSK was really smart on that. So, without more, I think I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just pick up a couple of the deal-related comments there, because I think Christoph did a nice job of synthesizing what was a fantastic discussion here. As it relates to the risk-sharing deal versus the acquisition, we spent months trying to figure that one out, actually. And ultimately, when you're dealing with a situation with a transformative platform like this, for them to give us enough rights in a licensing deal to make it worth it for us, they'd be giving up most of the value of the company and not having a real obvious exit then for their investors. And as a publicly traded company, that was a difficult proposition for them. From our perspective, I mean, we really bought into this. Obviously, we put $750 million on it. We really bought into this as a potential transformative platform for us. So when the two things happen, you work through. We were talking for well over a year before we got to the point of even considering acquisition. And I think then, just to pick up on some of the cultural and integration stuff, for us, very important to try to get that culture that they have there and bring it in. Agree difficulties, but we've actually now, 2 years in, had real success. It has worked. And some of the ways that we've achieved that, even starting before the acquisition was announced, we put together the integration teams for both sides. And we did a subtle thing in that we didn't call it an integration team, we called it an induction team. And because integration has this negative connotation of mashing it together, really we wanted to learn from each other. So I picked a handful of people to represent our functions on our side, people who are really change agents within their groups in the organization, to be the people on the induction team. And obviously, virtually everyone that works at Citrus sort of fits in that category because that's what we kind of learn from. So at each level, so the HR people, the finance people, the discovery people, really started to learn from each other, and then they take it back. And I think it has been successful at that level. Additionally, you do have to have some of the senior people. You have to work on the retention, and actually, how do you do it? It's not just about what you've heard us say a couple of times. We didn't even talk about his salary. It was about how do we keep these really entrepreneurial people motivated in a big company environment. And the way we've done that is found places where they can play. So, Christoph took over the Seed, which is our Center of Excellence for External Drug Discovery, making deals with other biotechs. Obviously, he knows that space. And most recently now, he's running our venture fund. And Michelle Dick, who's another key person there, also incorporated with the Seed. So we got it at both the leadership level, but also at the more operational level. And I think leveraging what we call the induction program really helped to make that happen.
Awesome. We'll happy to take questions from the best section, which is right here. You should see his face. He's like so happy when I say that. Maybe not here first.
I do have a question, maybe a little bit of a challenging question. A lot of our curriculum here at HBS is about ethical leadership and ethical decision making, but we sometimes fail to translate that to some real tangible business cases. So in this case, it talks about how Citrus refused to allow a DPU neurology to use your drugs in potential treatment of Alzheimer's. And it says specifically that you were concerned that if another group developed a drug for Alzheimer's, it would undercut price in diabetes treatment.
Did it say price or the development path?
It says the pricing in the marketplace.
That's terrible of me. Yeah, no, so it's a good question. So would it be ethical to stop the development of a drug in a different disorder like Alzheimer's because of pricing concerns? Honestly, what happened is when you develop a drug for a certain indication, you put so much resources into that indication that you probably don't have enough resources for another indication. It's just another $500 million for another trial. So that's the main motivator. And the other thing, actually, frankly, is that when you're working in a specific disease state, but you go into another maybe more severe disease state that has longer-term trials, if you see unexpected things in that other trial, it could actually kill the diabetes path. So that was the reason why we did it. But actually, I totally agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to develop drugs to help people. And if you're not always laser-focused on that, it's unethical, and that would be a bad decision.
There's also an element of risk assessment that comes into each of these decisions. So if you think about each therapeutic area has a portfolio of things that we're working on. So Alzheimer's, we have very active programs. And we have molecules that we think have better chances of actually becoming drugs than, for instance, this one. So where are we going to put our limited capital? We're going to put it in the ones we think have the best chance of becoming medicines. So those portfolio decision-making, those portfolio decisions happen at all different levels of the organization.
Go ahead.
Question?
Sure. We talked about how
Someone's cut your mic.
Can you hear me? Better?
We might have to go to another room that's not afraid.
Turn them off.
What's the question?
Yeah, the question is, we talked about...
We will go to someone else, and after the commercial break, we will come back to you. We'll ask him Mr. Rich. He's coming back.
He's coming back. Turn them off. Nobody wants to see this. No, he's a douchebag.
That in the context of having to make
Fun people.
Yeah. So it is interesting. Actually, I was tying Meredith's discussion earlier into this too, because let's not lose sight that the driver for this deal was this platform of potentially transformative drugs that are going to come out. And when we do evaluation analysis, when you do it in this kind of biotech space, we still do DCFs, but there's a big element of risk here, and especially if things aren't in the clinic yet, probably have single-digit probabilities of success. But when you have a platform, you have multiple shots on goal. So there's a full valuation that's done that justifies just about the price that you paid. And so how do you justify that little incremental bit more? Well, it's these softer things. What are we going to get? And I think the culture in GSK over the last couple of years, since Andrew Lee became CEO, Monsef became head of R&D, Patrick Balance took over drug discovery, changing dramatically the instruction into these SEDs and DPUs really facilitates the mindset of we really want to change here. And what we're trying to do, awesome. What we're trying to do with these DPUs is create biotech companies inside the big umbrella of more consistent funding that comes from the sales that are being generated versus having to always go to the public markets. So how best to replicate that? Now that we've got it established, we've got footholds, we've hired in another thing, Trevor, to your point earlier, we've hired in a lot of people to run those DPUs that are ex-biotech CEOs. So there's sort of a mindset coming that way. Now we bring in a model of a very successful one that already exists. And so people that are running these DPUs, welcome back, want to actually learn how do we succeed. And so they reach out and look at what's brought in. So.
Okay, you're up, big guy.
All right, I hope this works now. We talked in our section F about... Yeah. We spoke that GSK's drug discovery unit is structured very similar to an academic institution. So why do you think this structure is suitable for drug discovery? And secondly, how do you encourage collaboration between the